There is a moment in history, it doesn't happen often, when everything that seemed permanent suddenly isn't. The maps change, the money moves, the institutions that everyone trusted start cracking at the foundations. The old powers start looking over their shoulders, and a whole new set of players, people who were told to wait, to be patient, to stay in their lane, suddenly realize that the lane itself has disappeared. We are living in that moment right now, today, and the terrifying thing, most people have absolutely no idea. Welcome to the Global Transformation Forum. I'm Dr. Vivian Atud, economist, author, international consultant, and someone who has spent the last 2 decades watching how the world changes, why it changes, and crucially, who gets to shape that change and who gets crushed by it. This is season 3, and I want to start it the way I think every important conversation should start, with honesty. The world is not the same place it was 5 years ago, not even close. We are watching a global restructuring of power, of economics, of geopolitics, of technology, of social contracts. That happens once in a generation, maybe twice in a century. And yet most of the conversation I see on the news, on social media, in boardrooms and classrooms is still operating from the old map, still using yesterday's frameworks to try to understand tomorrow's reality. Today, I want to break that open. I want to tell you exactly what I see happening, why it matters, and most importantly, what it means for you. Because you cannot prepare for a future you refuse to see clearly. Let's get into it. Let me start with a question. Where do you think power lives in the world today? If your answer is Washington, D.C., or Brussels, or Beijing, you're not wrong, but you're also not seeing the full picture. Because here is what I keep noticing. The world that was built after the Second World War, the Bretton Woods system, the IMF and World Bank, the UN Security Council, that world is under enormous, unprecedented pressure, not just stress, structural pressure. I was in a conference recently, sitting in a room with economists, policymakers, and what struck me was not what was being said at the podium. It was what was being whispered in the corridors, the uncertainty. The IMF has revised its global growth forecast downward. The G7 no longer speaks for the majority of global GDP. BRICS now represents more than 45% of the world's population. The African Union just admitted the African continent as a permanent G20 member. China and the US are locked in a technology war. These are not peripheral stories, these are tectonic shifts, and they are happening simultaneously. When multiple tectonic shifts happen at the same time, that is not a crisis, that is a restructuring. And restructurings create losers, but they also create enormous opportunities. So today, I want to give you 5 things I believe are absolutely true about this moment in history. 5 things that will help you see the world more clearly and position yourself, your organization, or your nation to be on the right side of what's coming. Point 1. The center of gravity is moving east and south. The West built the world order after 1945, and it was brilliant for a while. The institutions, the frameworks, the trade systems, they created real prosperity. I don't want to dismiss that. But here is the thing about power. It follows productivity, it follows population, it follows resources. India just became the world's most populous nation. Nigeria will be the 3rd most populous country on earth by 2050. The median age in Africa is 19. In Germany, it's 46. In Japan, it's 49. The world's workforce of the future is not in Europe or North America. It is in Africa, in South and Southeast Asia, in parts of Latin America. This is not a prediction. This is a demographic fact. Saudi Arabia is building NEOM. The UAE is investing in AI and biotech at an unimaginable scale. Indonesia's digital economy is growing faster than almost anywhere else. Vietnam has become a global manufacturing hub. The center of gravity is moving. Point two, the technology revolution is not what most people think it is. When most people talk about technology, particularly AI, they talk about productivity, efficiency, jobs, automation. And yes, all of that is real. But that framing misses the deeper story. The deeper story is about power. Whoever controls the AI infrastructure of the future controls something more consequential than oil, because AI is not a product. AI is a platform. It is the operating system on which the entire global economy will run. Right now, the US and China are in a ferocious competition for that future. The US has OpenAI, Google DeepMind. China has Baidu, Huawei. Both sides are competing for technical standards, regulatory norms, and geopolitical leverage. And in the middle of this, what is Africa doing? Mostly consuming technologies built by others. That has to change. We are not going to be users of the AI revolution. We are going to be builders of it. The window is still open, but it will not stay open forever. Point three, the global financial system is being rewired. Here is something that would have sounded radical 5 years ago. The dollar's dominance is not guaranteed. I am not a doomsday economist, but nations are building infrastructure that does not depend on the dollar. Russia and China settled 90% of trade in non-dollar currencies. Saudi Arabia is discussing oil sales in other currencies. BRICS nations are developing a shared payment system. For the first time in 75 years, the architecture of global finance is being genuinely contested. For African nations, this is potentially transformative, but only if we have the economic literacy, the institutional capacity, and the political will to navigate the transition strategically. The question is whether we are at the table or inheriting someone else's architecture again. Point four, the social contract is broken almost everywhere, and nobody wants to admit it. Look at the political landscape globally. Populism on the rise, institutional trust at historic lows, young people deeply disillusioned. In France, the Yellow Vest movement. In the US, political polarization. In Chile, Brazil, Kenya, mass protests driven by young people who say, this is not working for us. This is not a coincidence. This is a symptom. The system is not bending. It is broken. I find that deeply concerning. History is clear about what happens when citizens lose faith in institutions. The vacuum gets filled, and rarely by something better. This is a leadership crisis masquerading as a political crisis. Leaders who understand that will be the ones who can do something. Point five, Africa is no longer the world's charity case. It is the world's next great story. I believe the African continent is the most important underreported story in the global transformation of our time. The AFCFTA is the largest free trade area in the world. 55 nations, 1.4 billion people. African startups raised over $6 billion. Rwanda's economic transformation is remarkable. None of this is a coincidence. It is the result of intentional decisions. The rebuilding of the world is creating space, real space, for Africa to claim a place at the table it has never fully occupied before. Whether we take that space is up to us. Now, here is the uncomfortable part. We are consuming more information than ever and understanding less. We scroll, we react, we perform outrage. Somewhere in that cycle, the capacity for deep structural thinking is being quietly eroded. When did you last sit down without your phone and seriously think about where the world is going? The leaders who will build the great companies and institutions are the ones who thought the most clearly, not the ones who consumed the most content. possibility does not automatically translate into outcome. It requires us to do the work, the institutional work, the educational reform work, the hard, unglamorous, patient work of building things that last. Nobody is going to rebuild the world for us. So, what do you actually do with all of this? Let me give you 5 things, concrete, actionable, starting now. First, update your mental map. Follow analysts from the global south. You cannot navigate a world you cannot see. Second, get serious about AI literacy. You do not need to become a data scientist, but you need to understand the basics. Ignorance here is not neutral, it is expensive. Third, if you are a leader, your most urgent job is to rebuild trust. That means transparency and accountability. Fourth, think about where you are physically and economically positioned. Are you in a sector that is growing or declining? Fifth, invest in relationships across the new frontiers. Build connections with people in India, the Gulf, Southeast Asia. The most valuable currency is trust. I want to leave you with something. Every generation has had to make a choice, 1,000 small choices about whether to pay attention or to look away, whether to build something or to wait for someone else to build it. We are that generation. You are that person. The world is being rebuilt right now. The walls are literally being moved. The old signs are coming down. Someone has to have the clarity to see it clearly, the courage to say it honestly, and the conviction to do something about it. I believe that person can be you, but only if you choose to see. Thank you for spending this time with me on the Global Transformation Forum. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Visit me at dadavivianatud.com. Next episode, Africa's Youth Wave. Until then, stay curious, stay bold, and keep transforming.